Starting. Hey, we
Hey,
are recording. Hi. Hey, Rachel. How are you doing?
I'm all right, Peter. How are you?
Pretty good.
You
Let's,
ready to talk about our stuff?
yeah. So we're gonna try something a little different, and we're gonna do, um, I wouldn't say top five, but a list of five from each of us things that we're enjoying recently. So
hmm
a little, yeah. How about you go first, or do you want
All
me to
right,
go first?
I can go first.
Go for it.
Um, so the thing that I'm starting on a high note, because this thing has brought me a lot of joy, and
Yeah.
that is She-Ra, the reboot of the She-Ra series. She-Ra and the Princesses of Power is the whole name, and it's on Netflix, and it is wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, I never watched the younger one. I never watched the older one when I was younger. But I really, really love the new design, and they've
What's up?
changed it. Mhm.
Go ahead.
Oh, they've changed it a bunch. So it's about this teenage girl named Adora, and she was part of the Horde, which, oh no, spoiler, is actually the bad guy, but she doesn't know that at the beginning, and then finds this magical sword that gives her these visions about her past, and she leaves the Horde to join the other magical princesses to defeat the evil Hordak and his Horde. And when she holds a sword, she does this like magical girl transformation into She-Ra, who is tall and powerful and amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And the animation style, I've seen a couple episodes. The animation style is it's like slightly I in my lame vocabulary, it's like slightly anime-ish, right?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of like Avatar, The Last Airbender.
Okay. Yeah, never saw that, but okay.
Sort of like inspired by anime, maybe.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
I watched a lot of the Netflix Voltron cartoon, and the colors are kind of similar. Like it's like those pinkish, purpley, glowy, like electronic glowy things.
mhm,
Does that making sense? And
yeah.
they kind of pop, and yeah, the animation is really cool. I like the tone in it too. Like there's action in it, and it's also goofy, but not being like silly unto itself. You know?
Yeah, it's not a wacky show.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and
They're
it's
not doing like, look at us, we're Shira, ha ha. Like the concept of Shira is not the funny part. The funny part is the jokes.
yeah, it's just in some ways it's just a really great like ensemble show. Like you've got all these well fleshed out characters
Hmm.
and all the sidekicks have their own stories in their own right and I'd say are just as important as She-Ra, and that while she's sort of like the key to uniting everybody and getting everybody to work together, that it is about everybody coming together as a team
Hmm.
and getting all of the um, to rebuild the Princess Alliance and getting all the other princesses with powers to help defeat Hordak.
Do you do you relate to it?
I kind of do,
Yeah.
honestly, um, because She-Ra had been like totally on board with the Horde. Like she was raised by them, and that was all she knew. And then she finds this like other way to be, and she finds out that the Horde was wrong and bad, and she leaves.
Uh-huh.
And she has to sort of reinvent her life, and she's a little stunted in some ways, and that provides some of the humor of the show too, like this sort of fish out of water, her learning about parties and learning how to find joy in life.
Uh-huh.
It's a really big important part of this, and that Like I identify a little bit with that, leaving the witnesses.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's real good.
I liked that aspect of it too, because like I'm coming out of like the years ago, like conservative Christian background and
Sure.
stuff, and yeah, it's I mean our stories are different, but yeah, I can relate to that whole thing. Um, I never watched the original She-Ra when I was a kid because like I was a kid in the 80s and everything was all super gender normy, and I
Mhm,
was probably affected by that, like, oh, boys don't watch She-Ra,
mhm, mhm.
um but I watched the hell out of He-Man,
Sure.
and I'm familiar with the whole like Castle Grayskull stuff.
Mhm.
And the original She-Ra's on Netflix now too, so we could like go back in and fill in our gaps.
Yeah, I'd kinda like to do that actually. It looks awful. My um, but that might just be through the lens of this new amazing one. Um,
Yeah, the animation style back then, it was like this weird combo from like Hanna-Barbera and something else, if I'm remembering correctly. And so a lot of the things are like they drew, the frame of the character's arms this way, and then the frame of the character's arms that way, and then they just pasted them together to make them run.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and, everybody in the original series kinda looked the same, like,
Hmm.
same face shape and everything, because it was basically sold or, it was made to sell action figures,
Yeah,
so if
totally.
everybody look the same, um, then it's real easy because then you just put different colors on them and
Yeah.
they're different characters. And that's something I really like about the new one is everybody looks different. Like everybody is different colors and shapes and sizes.
Yeah, yeah.
And
What's the one princess where she does not look thin and like Barbie like. She's the probably the first princess that you see in the show. She's got
oh,
kind of
Glimmer.
crazy glimmer, yeah. Yeah, she looks
Yeah.
like a stocky, but not like cartoonishly stocky. She's just like a normal-ish looking stocky cartoon girl,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. She's a little thick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, she's short, she's a little chubby, and I love her because she's a friend of mine pointed out that of course someone who can teleport might be a little chubby too.
That's funny.
But yeah, everybody's like different shapes and sizes, and then you've got Scorpia, who's like my favorite, who's this like big beefy gal,
Mm,
and
I haven't gotten that far.
oh, sorry, spoilers.
No, I don't care. I'm just saying I
Um,
haven't seen that one.
you'll like Scorpia.
Oh, okay, cool.
um, and yeah, and um, it also has really great villains in it. So like the main bad guy, Hordak, I don't really care about. He's still back in the shadows. Um, And I'd say even Shadow Weaver, who was sort of Adora's surrogate mother in a way. She raised Adora. She's the one that found her.
Hmm.
Um, and also raised Catra, apparently. Um, she's okay. She's like a good mid-level villain, but the person that really stands out for me is Catra, who had been Adora's best friend and then feels abandoned when Adora leaves. And Adora tries to get Catra to go with her, but she won't.
Hmm.
And she it turns into some really really great character development with the both of them and their backstory, and um and she becomes this really fully fleshed amazing villain, and it's really wonderful.
Hmm.
um and then of course the thing that like everybody is talking about with the show is that it is so gay. It is
Hmm.
um it's a super queer show. Like everybody, um there's like zero um toxic masculinity, and there's like well, except for maybe Hordak, I guess. Um,
Mm.
but a lot of the characters read as at least not clearly straight. And
That was going to be my question, is like, are they like actively gay, or is it like this is really heavily inferred that these characters are queer?
I think in some situations it's inferred more heavily. Like there's two characters that are implied to be together, two female characters. And then you have Bo, who seems to he connects with this one princess, but then he also really, really fanboys over this guy, and so you don't really know. And it's never a deal. Like it doesn't ever come up in any conversation, which I also like because it's also about friendship and about that being so important. And some of the characters, the Tor website said that the series reads as utterly queer in just about every aspect, and with many characters coded as fluid in terms of gender or sexuality and none as clearly heterosexual. And I really like that. Like there's little hints, and it's maybe clear if you're watching for it. Like I might be more likely to watch for that. But it's also not necessarily the focus, which I also like, because it shouldn't be like, hey, look, guys, look at these queer people we made for you.
Right.
You know, it's just like, here's this great story about people coming together as a team and working for the greater good. And also, they're from a variety of backgrounds.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah, it's real good. I'm so excited to see what happens next. I watched all of it really fast.
Yeah, I gotta watch the rest of it. All right. Wait, did I cut you off? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think that's it. Without going into like detail about specific episodes, which I don't want to do because I don't want to spoil stuff.
Yeah,
it is still fairly new.
Okay, cool. So, speaking of toxic masculinity, I have been. I went back to a show because I didn't realize that it was like comfort food watching for me, but it totally is.
Okay.
So, The Sopranos is streaming on Amazon Prime. The Sopranos was the 1999 HBO TV show starring James Gandolfini and Edie Falco, and it's about the mob. And I think everybody is at least familiar with the concept of this show, but like it's I don't know that we need to make shows like this anymore. And yet, like, I find myself seeking out these like Mad Men or like NYPD Blue or Deadwood or Sopranos, and watching these flawed, toxic masculinity type characters and watching them navigate this like new world, because that's sort of what all of those shows are about. Like, have you seen any episodes of The Sopranos?
I have not.
No.
I'm aware. Like it's been around long enough. Like we just talked, it's almost 20 years old.
Yeah, it came out January 10th, 1999. It's going to be 20 years old in a little over a month. But yeah, it's I don't know. I really I realize that this is a formula of, you take like this flawed rough male character who's like has really messed up views about like race and women and all of these things, and then you sort of watch him either, if that's where the character starts, the series NYPD Blue does this, and Mad Men does this, like you watch that character improve, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that too. That's part of what I liked about Mad Men is that you watch this, like, though I also like when you get a character like that, and sometimes they don't always improve. Sometimes they get worse and things get real bad.
Oh, sure.
And that's that also has its own appeal.
I feel like if that's like Breaking Bad took the opposite formula. Like it takes this guy who's mostly like on track, and then you watch his descent. Um,
Right.
but I can't think of an example of, well, I'm sure there are shows out there like that, but um, it's problematic in making, like, I have a couple different thoughts about these types of shows. Like,
Mhm.
you're making these characters sympathetic, and like we've had enough of that, I think, in our lifetime, like, to a certain degree. I feel like people who really like The Sopranos could like watch The Sopranos and then look over at like Donald Trump or something and be like, "Oh, well, he's going to get better. He'll learn the error of his ways," or like your racist uncle or grandpa at Thanksgiving, like, "Oh,
Right.
just cut him some slack." And that's not what's going through my head with these shows. Like Tony
Sure.
Soprano, James Gandolfini makes Tony Soprano likable because James Gandolfini was a great actor, And
Mhm.
the interesting thing for me is I like watching those characters sort of like collide with these new ideas and have to grapple with them. And sometimes they like get on board and sometimes they don't. But
Sure.
like the struggle is what's cool. And it's just a great, like, God, it's just a great show because it doesn't um it doesn't really wrap like the entire series itself. I won't describe what happens. There's plenty of things that describe the final episode of The Sopranos.
Sure.
Needless to say, it does not wrap things up nicely for you. And like the
Mhm.
entire series does that on micro levels too. Like you'll think that this plot is being set up a certain way, like, oh no, this guy owes this other guy money. This is a mob show. It's gotta result in this person dying because they owe Tony Soprano money. And they'll lead you down that path a little bit to think like, oh, okay, I have this mob formula figured out. So that
Mhm.
might happen one or two times.
Sure.
And then after that, like, if it happens again, it gets steered in this weird direction, and things come out of nowhere, and like plans go unfulfilled, and it's like family drama and friendship drama, and like Tony and Carmela, his wife, have like marital problems, and they're working on their stuff. It's for like a mob show. Like if somebody had never seen it before, and then they were like, "Oh, well, I'll sit down and watch some gunfights or something." Sometimes there's no violence in the episode at all,
Mhm.
and it's just a lot of talking, and,
Sure.
and mixed in with a lot of weird artsy scenes of like dream sequences, and like there's always animals in the show. Like Tony has nervous breakdowns because he gets distraught over these ducks that would like come and swim in his pool have left, and he it's such a good show. It is violent. Like there's a lot of violence in it,
Sure.
which I would be lying if I said, "Oh, I don't want to watch that stuff." Like there are some really good, like, satisfying mob violence scenes in that. Um, and it's also because it came out 20 years ago. Like it's shot differently and in a way that I prefer. Like there's less mood music all over the place, like I feel like is in Game of Thrones and
Mhm.
Westworld. Like
Sure.
people's dialogue is more believable. It's not as like espousing as either of those two shows. It's like people having actual conversations. Um the camera moves a little bit different. I feel like in Game of Thrones and Westworld, the camera is always like panning in some direction. Even
Sure.
even if it's slowly, it's like you can just leave the camera still. It's fine. Like, just leave it on that person, have them talk for a second. Um, yeah, it's real good, and there are so many seasons of it, and um, I put it on and play iPhone games and like look up every once in a while. It's super compelling, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean to be on the air that long, like there has to be something there. And I'm pretty sure it's won awards.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I trying to see if I can quickly see awards and nominations. Let's see. Yeah. Uh Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Drama Series. Every single year it was eligible.
Nice.
So, among other things, it was sort of the start, like the Sopranos and 6 Feet Under and The Wire. Though that was sort of like the era when HBO was establishing itself as like having these types of like quote prestige TV type shows, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And before those shows, like it had been done in other places, I guess, but not to this same sort of level. Um and it was funny, I was reading an article about The Sopranos that was written pretty recently, and somebody was talking about how like it came out at the same time as Analyze This, which was that movie with Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal, where Billy Crystal plays like a therapist,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Robert De Niro is the mob boss, and that is a zany comedy. And it's weird that it came out at the same time as that, because The Sopranos, the sort of hook for the first season is Tony Soprano is going to see a psychiatrist. Um,
Oh, okay.
it's weird because they both have that in common, and even in the second season, even they call that out. They call out like in The Sopranos, like, oh, like that movie, like Analyze This, you know.
That's
Like
kind of funny.
somebody finds out Tony's going to the therapist or whatever.
Sure.
Um, yeah. So it has that. It's sort of like self-referential, and there's a lot of characters from uh, Goodfellas, which is sort of its spiritual successor. Like there's no characters that carry over, but like the Lorraine Bracco, who is Dr. Melfi, Tony Soprano's therapist. She
Mhm.
was the main. She was the wife in Goodfellas with Ray Liotta. So like she played like a mobster's wife in Goodfellas. And it's funny because she was this really flawed character in Goodfellas, and now in Sopranos, she's like the conscience for this show. Um,
Huh. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And the other guy, what is his name? The guy who plays Christopher played. Did you ever see Goodfellas?
Mm-mm. No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. The guy Michael Imperioli was in Goodfellas, and he had a sort of minor role in Goodfellas, but it was a memorable one because he gets killed by Joe Pesci in this like brutal scene. Um,
Okay.
and and he was a lot younger then, so he's like this kid that Joe Pesci kills in the movie. But anyway, Michael Imperioli's in the show, and he's older, and he's like a one of the main guys in Tony's crew. Anyway, I feel like I talked way too much about it, but Sopranos is great. It still holds up. It's nostalgic
Hmm.
in a way that is not like this is dated. It's more nostalgic, like in a way like, oh yeah, I remember when cell phones looked like that, or like, oh yeah, I remember when we couldn't just have a smartphone and do XYZ, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think just to touch on that for a moment, that's something that I almost kind of wonder if that's part of why we have all of these shows now coming out that take place like maybe early 90s or in the
Mhm.
80s, because so many problems can be too easily solved by
Right.
having a cell phone,
Yeah. Yeah,
and it's very hard to get around that.
especially like I don't know where, like, if the drama is because the character can't figure out X,
Right.
right? Oh, how do we get ourselves out of this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
But anyway,
Um,
so that
yeah.
that's The Sopranos.
All right. Yeah, I definitely see the appeal. Um, and now I'm going to take it in the opposite direction and talk about my comfort viewing, which is
Yeah.
the Great British Bake Off,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
which is
I
maybe as far from The Sopranos as you can get.
Well, She-Ra is pretty far from The Sopranos too.
That's true. That's true. Though I would say like Great British Bake Off is even like more gentle. It's maybe the most gentle show available for human consumption.
I have never seen this, so you'll have to describe it for me.
Okay, so the basic premise is that it starts with it's a baking competition, and it's been on since 2010, and it's a British show. In Britain, it is the Great British Bake Off. In America, it is the Great British Baking Show, because apparently Bake Off is owned by like Pillsbury or something.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so it starts with like I forget how many bakers they start with, like 12 or something, 10 bakers, whatever, 10, I guess 10. Um, oh, actually, I'm looking at it now. Between 10 and 12. They start with 10 and 12 bakers.
Okay.
Um, and they go through a series of challenges. And so every episode starts with what's called the signature challenge, which is where, oh, and these are all amateur bakers. So these are just like regular people who don't bake professionally. They just
Mhm.
bake for enjoyment. Um, so the signature challenge is where they all have to bake the same kind of thing. Like they might all have to make a pie or a specific kind of cake, but then they can put their own spin on it and sort of make it their own.
Mhm.
And then the second challenge is the technical challenge, and that's where they're given a partial recipe. And so it'll have like the full ingredient list, but it might not say like what temperature to bake it at or for how long, or it might not say like how to make a specific part of it, and they have to sort of fill in the gaps based on their baking experience.
And per our previous conversation, they can't have cell phones and just look it up.
They cannot.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
no, there's no outside connection during the thing.
Mhm.
And so those two are filmed on the same day, and then the next day they come back and do the showstopper challenge, where they again all have to follow like a similar set of instructions or similar um, thing to make, like it's bread or it's cake or whatever, but they have to make something really big and amazing, sort of pull out all the stops. And then every week, someone is eliminated and someone is chosen as star baker. And why it's really great is that it's different than any other baking or cooking show I've seen. Like American cooking shows, it's all about the drama in between the contestants, and there's always like sniping,
Mhm.
um, and then things get like really intense, or like the judges will yell at them or disparage them. But on the Great British Bake Off, like a lot of times, if one person is done early, they will help someone else. And it becomes like this group of friends and colleagues, and everyone is just very kind to each other and really supportive. Like anytime anybody wins anything, everybody cheers.
Yeah.
And so the newer seasons are a little different, but the older seasons, the judges were a man named Paul Hollywood, which is like I feel like Paul Hollywood is like the classy version of Guy Fieri or something.
There's no way that's his real name, but
yeah,
yeah.
Paul Hollywood, and then the other judge is this older woman named Mary Berry. And and then there were also two hosts on the show, and they were Sue Perkins and Mel Giedroyc, and they're a comedy duo, and they've been doing like comedy together forever. And so they just sort of walk around and make conversation with the bakers while stuff is happening. And yeah, it's very sweet and it's very gentle and wholesome. And the producers kept trying to like introduce drama or try to capture when people were falling apart, because people, they take it so to heart and they take it so seriously. These like they'll talk about like, I know it's only a cake, but right now it's like everything. And so if someone's falling apart, Mel and Sue kind of got known for going over and either like throwing their coat on them or using a lot of brand names or would swear a lot so that part couldn't make it onto the show. And then eventually like the ratings and reviews supported this, that people watched it because it was so nice. It was just so nice. And then eventually the series went from BBC to Channel 4, and Mary Berry, Mel, and Sue stayed with BBC, and then they got some new judges, or new Judge Prue, and Paul Hollywood stayed, and then two new other comedians, Noel and Sandy, who are also fantastic.
Huh.
But yeah, it's really lovely. People. One of my favorite parts is at the end of the episode, people kind of talk about how things went, and whoever was star baker like calls home and puts on speakerphone whoever they call, and they're always so excited, and it's like usually their mom. Like no matter how old they are, they're usually calling their mom, and their moms are so proud. And it's adorable.
It's on what do you watch it on? What's the streaming service?
So you can watch it on PBS. It's also on Netflix.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, it's really lovely, and it's a fantastic show. Like if the world is feeling too dark and harsh, to just and so the other great thing is in between, like they'll have the camera inside the tent where they have the competition, and then they'll break it up with some narration about like whatever they're baking, sometimes the history of whatever that item is, especially when they get into the bread stuff, because that's bread tells a really interesting story about different cultures, and because it's such an early baked good, like it's something that usually shows up really early on in a society or civilization as like a staple, and so it tells a lot about whatever culture it comes from. And so sometimes there's like little history stuff, but then it also will just like pan to the English countryside. So in between shots of people like making cookies, or biscuits rather, because it's British.
British.
Right. It'll show some like lambs in like a field of lavender, and it's almost like absurdly nice.
Yeah.
Like it's just this like good and pure thing that exists. And Sue Perkins is my celebrity crush. She's this like gangly lesbian, and she's fantastic.
All right. That's the Great British Bake Off.
Yes.
I don't know. I might find myself watching some.
I think you might like it. Like some of the jokes get a little corny. Because they make a lot of baking puns, just like a lot of baking puns. But it's great because you see these people who come in with like maybe a low sense of self-confidence. Because they're just regular folk. Right. And they have these professionals judging their baking. But then these professionals say what a great job they do. Like there's this one woman, Nadia, who at the end of it, Sorry, spoiler, she wins one of the seasons.
Uh-huh.
Um, she says how it's the first thing she's ever really put herself forward for. Like, she's been a housewife and a mother and has always placed a lot of her happiness on what she does for her family. In part because she never felt like she could do something for herself like this.
Mm-hmm.
She never felt like she could succeed,
Mm-hmm.
and that she was after this she was never going to feel that way again, and that she was going to keep trying new things and growing. And now she is baking a cake for the Queen's birthday.
Ah. All
So
right.
yeah, this is really lovely.
That's a great British Bake Off. All right.
Yep.
Cool.
So what do you got next?
So not baking, but so I think when did that come out? So Vertigo is an imprint of DC Comics, and maybe that's too jargony. Basically, it just means like DC Comics owns this offshoot of DC Comics called Vertigo, and
Okay.
Vertigo is sort of known to make these weird comics. Vertigo Comics was around in like the late '80s, and they published The Sandman and Animal Man and Doom Patrol and Hellblazer, Swamp Thing. Just these they were all comics that, like, if you wanted to pick up something kind of superhero-y, you could do that. But then you quickly realize, like, um, all of the plots were just very like either super weird and horror-y, but they were smart. It was like the moody artsy kids comics that also adults could pick up too, because
Sure.
they were like super smart. Anyway, Vertigo had been going for a while, and Neil Gaiman wrote Sandman, and that was the imprint that published Sandman. Neil Gaiman's written a handful of comics over the years, and I think now that American Gods has its own TV show, and he Coraline got made, and he's becoming more of a name. I
Hmm.
think I think for that reason they decided to start making additional Sandman comics. Neil Gaiman wrote this sort of it's called the Sandman Overture that came out. What was that, last year or the year before? Um,
Yeah, it was pretty recent.
yeah, and that was sort of um, that or was that in 2013? That didn't come out in 2013, did it? That's way too long ago. Anyway, Sandman Overture came out, which was sort of like preparing everybody for more Sandman comics, because the Sandman had its run and it was done, and now Neil Gaiman wrote Sandman Overture, and that was supposed to bridge this gap into now what we have are these new Sandman comics. So they're new Sandman related comics, Books of
Okay.
Magic, House of Whispers, Lucifer, and The Dreaming. Those are 4 monthly new Sandman comics, and
Cool.
I can't explain. It's very hard for me to put into words how awesome it is that we are getting more Sandman comics.
Sure.
They're not written by Neil Gaiman. I think he wrote. There's a Sandman Universe comic, um, which is not monthly, but he wrote that one, which was sort of like a prelude to these other monthly comic books. So
Okay.
Books of Magic is, if you look at the cover, you go, "Oh, Books of Magic ripped off Harry Potter." And as far as I can tell, Books of Magic precedes Harry Potter by about 10 years. So If anything, it's the other way around. But also, it's just a British schoolboy with magic stuff.
Sure.
So, like, that's where the similarities stop, right? So,
Okay.
um, anyway, I'm gonna try and make this quick because I feel like I might be rambling a bit, and we don't want this episode to be 3 hours long.
No, that's right. Though I did want to just mention you had mentioned Lucifer comics.
hmm
It's not one that I'm going to talk about today, but there's a really fun interpretation of that comic on as a TV show.
I don't think that that's related. Is it related?
I think it is. Well, another Lucifer comic.
Yeah, somebody
Yeah,
else mentioned like
it's based on it.
it is. Oof.
It's pretty different. Like they make a lot of changes, but it's based on the DC Comics character created by Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, I watched maybe one episode of that or tried to. And the
Mhm.
thing is the tone is so different from the comic because
Yeah.
one thing that weaves together all of these comics is this it's this the weird pacing of these comics is one of the unifying characteristics of them all. Like the characters talk in kind of like a high Shakespearean sort of way.
Mm.
I it's good and bad. It's like if you are looking for a comic that is straightforward and you get to the end and you go, "Oh, now I realize what happened." That is not what any of these comics do. It's
Sure.
like they're all the language in them is sort of like I said, like this weird Shakespeareanness to it. There's like they're referencing like dream world and real world and like gods coming in and leaving and stuff. Um,
Mhm.
so books of magic, Timothy Hunter is one of them. House of Whispers is the other one, and that one is written, I believe, by a woman of color, which is the first time that a Sandman comic has done that. I believe. I might be getting that stat wrong, but it's really cool because um, that hasn't happened before.
Nice.
That I think for Sandman, Lucifer's pretty good too, and The Dreaming is really good. All four of those are great. And um, what this means for my life is that for a little bit, I was going to comic shops and buying single issues of comics,
Mhm.
which I don't usually do because I buy like I usually just wait until they have like the trade come out and then I buy them all at once.
Sure.
Um, so I can't express to you how I'm using that phrasing again. It's a very weird like rhythmic thing to okay, let me drive to Roseville to go to the source to pick up these comics, these like single issue comics and then put them in boards and then like you come home with these stack of single issues and you're
Mhm.
reading them and stuff. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's like a ritual.
it is, and it's pricey. So since I got a new phone, I will probably wait to read the rest of them.
That's
Um,
fair.
but yeah, new Vertigo Sandman comics, super good.
Nice. I do need to check those out. I love Neil Gaiman, and so anything that even if he's not writing the new ones, anything that he's started is sure to be kind of amazing.
Yeah, come over and read the single issues.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah.
I guess speaking of comics, that actually leads to the next one I'm going to talk about. Is a cartoon based on a graphic novel series, and it's called Hilda. Um,
Oh yeah, Hilda.
yeah, I guess I've just been watching a lot of really gentle things lately. Like, well, it's funny because I've been mixing these gentle stuff with like real creepy things. I don't know why I didn't choose any of those to talk about this time. Maybe next time. Um, but Hilda, it's about the adventures of this sort of fearless girl named Hilda, And um, it's a really great show. It's really cute, but it's also really well written. Um, so she goes on these adventures with her deer fox Twig, and she starts out in the country, but then she moves to the city of Trollberg with her mother, who's a single mom, and she befriends um, different magical creatures and sometimes different monsters, and learns how to make friends. And it's really great. The animation style is really fantastic because it looks like a graphic novel. It looks like a comic on the screen.
Yeah, I watched the series, but I kind of like had it on while I was doing a whole bunch of other stuff,
Mm.
so I could probably go back and watch it again. But what I noticed is like the way they must animate it in a certain um uh like CG style where if it's zoomed out to a degree, like it looks like rough pencil or
Hmm.
whatever. But then they made the choice that like when you zoom in on the character, the thickness of the line also gets thicker, like the thickness of the line of the line on the outside of their head or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like it also gets zoomed in.
Hmm.
I it am I describing it right? Did you notice
Yeah,
that?
that sounds about right. Yeah. Um, and I kind of like that. And
I
it
liked
gives
it
like a
too. I
depth to
liked it.
it.
Yeah, yeah, I liked it too. Yeah.
Um, and again, it's sort of a um, sort of fish out of water. I guess that's part of my theme for the day.
Oh, okay.
Um, um, besides just really gentle, nice, nice viewing. 2018's been rough, man.
Yeah, it is.
And I just want to watch a lot of soft shows. And yeah, so I lost my train of thought. What was to say? Oh, so it starts in the first episode. She like lives way out in the country with her mom, and they're like the only people for miles. And Hilda loves it because she can go roam the hills. She makes friends with elves, and she finds like all these neat creatures. Does a lot of drawings, and then it turns out that their house has been built in the middle of this invisible elf village this whole time, and the elves have been like disturbed, and eventually they make peace with the elves, but then their house gets squashed by a forest giant by
Hmm.
mistake.
Right.
And um and I like it because like the first episode it's just nice, and then the second episode actually starts to build and there's some mystery. Like you see this weird giant that's just sort of like behind the mountains, and then it's gone. And um so she explores and investigates that because she's very curious. And then when their house gets squashed, they have to move into the city, and Hilda doesn't really know what to do with herself because she hasn't had to make new friends. And so it's also about her learning social skills and when um and how to make friends while also still just being herself because she's weird. She's a super weird kid, but she means really, really well, and she's really smart. And
Hmm.
sometimes it gets her into a lot of trouble.
What I noticed about that show when I watched it was I liked that the villains, like the quote villains,
Hmm.
um, correct me if I'm wrong, but none of the villains were actually doing anything bad. It was like the assumption is, oh, this troll is out to get us or whatever.
Right.
And then like you said, he made a mistake and accidentally squashed the house. Like he was not being malicious. He just did the thing.
Yeah, like there's this they end up finding this baby troll because in Trollberg there's this wall around the city to keep the trolls out. And as sort of part of the classic trope about trolls, they turn into rock in the sunlight.
Hmm.
And so they find this baby troll, and the sun goes down and it comes to life. And um and then it's also like parent teacher conference night. And so while Hilda is trying to not look like a complete screw up, she's also trying to hide this troll because if you get caught with a troll, it's like this incredibly dire thing. Like you get killed or something. Like it's a way bigger reaction than you'd expect from this really lovely show.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to get the baby troll out. Meanwhile, a big troll comes crashing through and everyone's terrified, but really it's just looking for its kid. And as soon as it has its kid, it leaves. And so it's all these like misunderstandings and sort of like She-Ra, where it's people working together to solve problems. And in Hilda, a lot of times it's just about communication, and the problems arise when people aren't communicating.
It seems similar to like I haven't watched a ton of anime, but it seems like a lot of Miyazaki movies are kind of that same thing. Like especially like Spirited Away. That's really what it reminded me most of. Not necessarily an animation style but
in tone.
Parts parts of it felt like that. Spirited Away was a little creepier, I think.
Yeah.
But you know how like the characters in that the names of the characters in Spirited Away escape me. It ultimately it turns out that they're upset for one reason or another, and they present themselves as these like super villainy type things. But similar to what you just said, it's like a communication or misunderstanding, or once they get to know each other, then it's all good.
Yeah, and what I like is that they the relationship between Hilda and her mother is really great. And while her mom is often exasperated with her, they don't waste a lot of time with like Hilda having to prove every time that there are all these weird magical things happening. Like Hilda would be like, but there's elves, and her mom will be like, really? And she'll be like, yeah, there's elves. And well, okay. And then it moves forward with the plot.
Right.
Because like there's clearly all of these magical things all over this world, and while it makes sense their mom would be hesitant sometimes to draw that out, because there are some shows that do that, where that's the conflict in the show is like convincing this one person that what is happening is actually happening. And that always drives me bonkers. It's like, that's not an interesting plot line to me.
No, I agree. But,
so yeah, Hilda is great, and it's funny, and it's cute, and it's nice.
Yeah, I liked what I saw of it. Yeah. So all yeah. So another Netflix thing that I think we both watched was the New Adventures of Sabrina.
Yeah.
Is that the actual title? Sabrina the New Adventures of Sabrina?
The Chilling Adventures.
The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Teenage Witch. That show, I thought it was like remaking a TV show from the 90s, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Which I guess you could say it sort of was, but what I didn't realize is that Sabrina the Teenage Witch was an Archie character from Archie comics for like a long time ago. And it's funny or interesting, I should say, because Riverdale is like the spooky retelling of Archie stuff, basically. Right. And there's comic books that they put out now, like Zombies and Archie comics and stuff like that. So there's this series is following along in that whole vein of things. It's a really good show, but the specific thing that I wanted to talk about was the use of the Baphomet statue from the Satanic Temple in that show. Yeah. So within the show, it's almost like the Satanic Church exists as if it were like the church in Footloose. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
but it sort of serves the same purpose. It's like, here's this religious institution like imposing itself on Sabrina, and she's sort of bucking against that system, but also trying to embrace parts that she likes and
Hmm.
live in this in between world. Well, in the Satanic Church, they have basically a replica of this Baphomet statue that in real life, like actual reality, the Satanic Temple made to for themselves. They crafted this thing.
Hmm.
So the Satanic Temple it's a religion, but it is a religion that does not believe in any god. It does not believe in an actual Satan. It's basically like promoting not humanism, because they sort of disagree with being called that, but like intellectualism and freedom of thought and things like that. So the Satanic Temple sued Sabrina and Netflix, like the creators of Sabrina and Netflix, and because they were saying it was like copyright infringement and stuff. Rightly
Hmm.
so, I think. Like, as much as I enjoy the show, and I like that they sort of turned this story of like the religious church holding somebody down, but you put the satanic spin on it to maybe get people who are used to that idea to like self-reflect and say like, oh,
Hmm.
here, this is okay, like I get how this could be bad.
Yeah.
As much as I like that, I do not like that they put the Satanic Temple in there, and it just was kind of like lazy and showed that they didn't know
Yeah.
what they were doing. But I'm when I did some research on this today, and it looks like since the last time I looked into it, this article is dated November 21st. So Netflix settled with Satanic Temple somehow. So they settled it out of court. They're going to be getting copyright credit on episodes of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Um, and then it says the remainder of the settlement is subject to a confidentiality agreement. So
Hmm.
that's good.
Yeah.
um, excuse me. But yeah, the show's barring that, the show is super good, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, I found it really interesting, and like you said, it's kind of great because the Satanic Church in that show is so incredibly um like organized Christian religion.
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
with all of the where they talk a big game about, oh, it's about free will and making this choice, and how it's, you'll be free when you join the church.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes down to it, it's about following the leader and doing everything that they say, and actually giving up your free will and giving up your ability to make your own choices, and um, existing within a very strict set of rules, or at the risk of being banished if you if you mess up. um,
Mm-hmm.
and I really like that Sabrina tries to make the point that that's not what any of this should be about, that that's not what witches are actually like, and she wants to push for free will and the ability to choose. And yeah, I liked it. I watched it a second time, and I didn't like the character of Sabrina as much. I like what she does, and I like what she's sort of representing in the show.
Mm-hmm.
But I found the supporting cast to be the real stars of the show for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, yeah, I think I agree with you. That actress was on Mad Men, and she
Hmm.
played Sally, who's a great character on Mad Men, and I think
Yeah,
she does
sounds
a
fantastic.
she does a decent job in the show. But then I don't know, there's moments when I kind of disagree with what she's doing. But anyway, overall, it's a good watch.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's I guess just to mention, I think it's good to mention there are a few like problematic moments in how they deal with race. But
yeah,
um
yes, I agree.
but overall, I think it's worth a watch. And I'm interested to see what they'll do with it
Hmm.
as things have progressed because so much happens within the season. And I think it's
Hmm.
really well paced, the stuff that happens and when it happens. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, like I said, when you have a good supporting cast like that, when the secondary characters are that good, it makes for a really strong show. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun and it's kind of spooky and it's way gorier than I was expecting.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's some disturbing
Um,
parts in it for sure. Yeah.
and it's funny, like I said, my autumnal viewing has been a mix of these like really gentle shows like Great British Bake Off.
Yeah.
Even
And
well,
these
I should
really
say,
creepy
yeah,
things.
I mean I've been watching Great British Bake Off for forever, but so yeah, it's been that, and then I'll watch Sabrina, and then I'll watch
Yeah.
Hilda, and then I'll watch Haunting of Hill House.
Oh, I
So
need to watch that. Yeah.
no, it's
Yeah. All right. So that's Sabrina.
oh,
Um,
just one
let.
more quick
Oh.
note about Sabrina,
Oh. Okay.
and then I'll jump on to my next one. Um, is that you had mentioned the tie-in with the Archie comics?
Yeah.
There's a lot of speculation that it will eventually cross over with the show Riverdale.
Yeah. I mean, they already mentioned, like, in the show itself. They mentioned
Yeah,
like
they mentioned
Riverdale.
the town of Riverdale, and it would make sense because it's that same sort of like high intensity color and
Yeah.
sort of like the stylistic choices are the same in that everything could either be now or in like the 60s, like the early
Yeah.
60s.
Yeah. 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 For sure.
Though at one point Ambrose does have a laptop, so it's definitely modern times, but everything's styled like they're about to go to a sock hop. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to make a loud noise right here.
okay.
Just making noises. Because okay, there should be enough on the audio for me to see that. Um,
Okay.
I have to let Zobi out,
Okay.
and also, do we want to finish? Because we've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes,
Okay.
or do we stop at 3? What do you want to do?
I mean 3 is fine. Like that's
Did we say 3 at the beginning? Let me go. Let me
we
let
said
Zob
5, but we can always you can always change that too.
go back in. Hang on. Let me. If you don't mind sticking around for a couple minutes,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Zobi out, and then I'll be right
Okay.
back.
Sounds good.
Okay. 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 I know. Hang on. Hang on. Oh. Come here, bud. Zoe, let's go out here. Let's go out this way. Oh, hang on. Hang on. Wait. Wait. I'm back.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Sorry, he really had
Sorry.
to pee.
Yeah, no worries.
Wait, let's not start talking yet, because he's gonna do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I got. Now that I took that break, I got 2 more in me. Mine are gonna be quick.
Yeah, actually, so are mine. So
Okay. Cool.
I think it's my turn.
Yeah. I wish there was a. There was a time on this. I don't see a time. Okay. Wait. I'm gonna make a loud noise again.
Okay.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
And we came back.
All right.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Hello.
What do you have for us?
So the one I want to talk about is a show I just started watching. And it's Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is a sitcom. Which is not something I've been watching a lot of lately, because a lot of sitcoms I just either find annoying or like the jokes are too cheap, too lazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, which is to say I'm not above like rewatching The Office a bunch of times, but Brooklyn Nine-Nine is surprisingly funny, and I thought it was going to be sort of like I said before, a wacky show. I thought there were going to be, and there's some hijinks. There's a moderate amount of hijinks, but um, it's a really great cast. Everybody's comedic timing is really great. The writing is actually pretty sharp. The characters are all goofy and kind of caricatures, but um, I thought it was going to be about a cop who like never took anything seriously and just like goofed off all the time. And while he is a kind of a goofy guy, he's also very charming, but also incredibly competent. He's like one of the best detectives on the force.
That's Andy Samberg's character.
That's Andy Samberg's character. Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of like we talked about before, it has queer characters without being like, look, it's the gay one. We made the gay one. Not that there's like anything wrong with characters that are like clearly gay or queer, but it's also nice to have representation for people who don't present that way.
Yeah, and isn't the one I know of, because I've watched only a few episodes of that, but isn't the captain gay? Right?
Yeah,
like
the captain is gay.
And he's a gay black man, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's great because it comes up, first like really casually, but it also comes up talking about his struggle coming through the police force, because they ask like, well, why is it taking you so long to make captain? And it's because he was a gay black police officer, and in the 70s that would not get promoted. And so it wasn't until much later when they realized the potential of sort of the recruiting potential if they if the force supported the gay black police officer, that he was able to make captain. And he's one of my favorite characters. He's incredibly deadpan, super stoic, and frankly a lot of the jokes are about that. Like a lot of the ones about him are about not being able to tell what he's feeling. But he's also a really thoughtful character, and he's really good at his job. And I guess I really enjoy shows about competent people. Like there's a couple detectives on the force that are really bad at their job, but for the most part, they're all kind of a bunch of weirdos, but they're all really into what they do and they're all good at it.
hmm It as much as I sort of dislike the Harry Potter house as personality
Yeah.
trope thing,
Mhm.
as much as I dislike that, it calling something like a quote like Hufflepuff thing
Mhm.
is good shorthand for like um just like nice TV,
Yeah.
like
I'm
the
really
good
into Hufflepuff viewing.
yeah, like the Good Place is kind of like that.
Yeah.
And I think some of the writers on Brooklyn Nine Nine, I could be wrong, but I think some of the writers on Brooklyn Nine Nine came from Parks and Rec, which was
Yep.
also that same sort of like nice comedy type stuff.
Yeah, it has that same kind of vibe. And the characters are really funny. Like Andy Sandberg plays the main character, Jake Peralta, and and then, but the thing is, they're all really funny characters. Like you've got Rosa Diaz, she's really closed off and she's super tough, and um, and then Terry Crews is also on it. He plays the sergeant,
Yeah,
and
he's
he's so good.
yeah, I've only seen like two or three episodes of it, but I like Terry Crews as a person and what
Yes,
he does like for for I guess if we could call like the acting community or whatever, because wasn't he, am I remembering right? Like, didn't he sort of like admit that he was sexually assaulted by some other dude at a party?
yeah,
Like
yeah, he did.
with regards to like this person was basically like, oh, but you want to get ahead or get ahead in this business or whatever. And
Yeah, um, I really, I really admire him. Um, he's, this has sort of come up a couple times tonight too while we've been talking the idea of toxic masculinity. He's sort of the opposite
yeah,
of that. He is very non-toxic masculinity because he's about as masculine in a lot of ways as you can get. Like
yeah, he's
he's
huge. He's
strong
yeah,
and
yeah,
um he can be kind of scary sometimes, but he's also this incredibly gentle person who um in real life is an activist, and um on the show he plays an incredibly devoted father and husband, and just loves his family and really cares about the detectives that work under him.
yeah, yeah. I've tried to get into the show, and there's just something about it that I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I have to have maybe I maybe it says something about my own personality. Like I have to have some I don't need everything to be like terrible, but I don't know. I don't
No,
know what
I know what you mean.
it's
Like,
like it needs some teeth to it. And when I
yeah.
remember when I was watching some of the episodes, it was just like I know that yeah, I don't know. I was just sort of like,
It,
yeah, I know things are going to be okay in this cop
yeah.
show. I don't know.
Yeah, there's no oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, I can't think of it. But yeah, like by the end of the hour everything is going to be resolved.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
everything's
Yeah.
going to work out okay.
I'm
And
not saying that's inherently bad. I'm just
no,
saying that like for me when I was watching it, it was tough for me to like see what the draw was, I guess.
sure.
Even though
Um
like I I am agreeing with all the things that you were saying. Um
mhm.
I think I just needed my like spice level to be, you know,
Yeah.
more hot sauce or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's a catch-up show.
It's a
Is what it
ketchup
is.
show. Yeah.
Um but oh, the other thing I like is that so people make fun of each other a little bit. Um but they pretty much accept everyone for being just kind of the weirdos they are.
Hmm.
Like, there's this character Boyle, who in any other sitcom would be like the butt of every joke because he is not cool. He's weird, and he gets like way too into things, and he's like um
Sounds like
like
the Dwight character, sort of.
yeah, but less intense,
Oh, okay.
a little more socially aware. Um but he's also kind of like feminine in different ways, and
Mm-hmm.
um he's kind of a goober is what it is. But Jake is his best friend. And like he is Jake's best friend because they're buddies. And while he kind of makes fun of him a little bit, ultimately they have each other's back. And I really like that these people can just be weird
Mm-hmm.
without it being like it's a source for humor in the show, but it's not them always making fun of each other
Mm-hmm.
in sort of like a Jim Dwight situation.
Yeah, and even in the office, like that sort of making fun of Dwight thing for being weird became less and less, I think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. As the characters grow and get to see each other in different lights.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I like that. And part of the thing too is Boyle is just sort of leans into it, like he is who he is, and he's very confident in his weird self,
mm-hmm.
and he just
That
but he's
that
he's also a good detective. Like he has no ego, and so he just like grinds through it. Like he's not brilliant, but he gets his work done, and he does a good job.
that guy, the actor that plays him, Joe, I think is Joseph
Mhm.
Truglio. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, he has been in like he plays the weirdest dudes in movies. Like
Yeah.
I recently rewatched I Love You Man. I don't know if you've ever seen that with Paul Rudd and the guy from tall guy from How I Met Your Mother. Anyway,
Oh,
that guy.
um, I don't think I ever saw that.
Anyway, that guy plays a character in that movie, and he's just this weird as hell self. he
Um,
he talks in a very high pitched voice for some reason in that
mhm.
movie. Anyway, yeah, yeah, Boyle.
He's um, what was he? Oh, I saw him in Wet Hot American Summer,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and he's also super weird in that.
yeah. Oh,
He's really good at just like leaning into it is
yeah,
what he commits to it 100%.
right.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I should try and watch that. Some more of that again.
it's a great show. It's usually kind of a background show for me, like while I'm doing other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the
And that,
physical comedy is really also excellent.
yeah, and that's on Netflix, Hulu.
Hulu. It's on
Yeah,
Hulu.
that's right. It's on Hulu. All right. I have two very short things for my next things. Have you seen this new Captain Marvel trailer?
I have not seen the new one. I meant to watch that before we talk today.
Oof. It's so I have been getting like Marvel MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe movie fatigue like crazy. And
Mhm.
then I went out to Maine to visit my dad, and on the plane I watched Ant-Man and Wasp
Okay.
with Paul Rudd, and the second installment in the Ant-Man and Wasp series.
Yeah.
And that was so good. It was like the right amount of like weird sci-fi stuff and CG and action and everything, and like humor, and didn't take itself too seriously, but didn't like what wasn't stupid.
Yeah.
It was just really good. Um, and yeah, I think this new Captain Marvel movie with Brie Larson as Captain Marvel is just going to be more of the same. Like the trailer looks great. Like it's like spacey and futuristic, and Brie Larson is interacting with a CG, like it's Samuel L. Jackson, but they didn't. You don't notice that they used CG to make him look younger, but there is no way that Samuel L. Jackson looks this young anymore. You know?
Sure.
So like in the trailer, it's not like I was watching it and going, "Oh, that's clearly a CG young Samuel L. Jackson." No, it's just I know for a fact that Samuel L. Jackson is not that thin and 28 years old anymore or whatever.
Sure.
And there's a lot of him in the trailer, and like Brie Larson is like fighting and stuff, and they show like weird space clips of her in like this suit, and she's got like she's got like the mask helmet thing that she has on makes her hair stick out up top like a cool looking mohawk.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, so it's not like it's a very unique looking costume for a female superhero. It's not the like, oh, how are they doing battle in that thing, because they're basically like in a bikini or whatever,
Or their boobs not falling out all over the place.
right? It's not that. And she has this cool mask on, and even most female superheroes that I know of who have masks, it's like the flowing hair kind of comes out the back.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not like that. It's like it all comes out up top and makes her look like she has this really cool mohawk.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of it right now. That is badass.
Yeah, it looks really fucking cool. Really fucking cool. And then also, so in the midst of all this, and they're like, it's a comic book. It looks like like there's some like mystery as far as what her background is, and like she got taken away into this ship and then like brought back, and she's fighting, and it all takes place in the 80s, which is why Samuel L. Jackson is so young. And there is a moment towards the end of the clip where Samuel L. Jackson, as Nick Fury, is like playing with a kitty cat and getting like really excited about this cat.
Mm-hmm.
And she has to like get his attention because they're supposed to be going to do something. And yeah, so
Sure.
young Samuel L. Jackson, cool Brie Larson suit, Captain Marvel trailer. It looks really good, and that's my one of my other two things.
Nice. Yeah, I'm super excited for that movie. I I liked when the first trailers came out, and you get all these folks who are like, "Oh, you should smile more."
Yeah,
and
and
then
then they put the weird smiles on all the male,
like creepy smiles.
yeah.
Brie Larson is fantastic.
And all the male Marvel superheroes.
Yeah.
What's your next thing?
So my next one. So I realized the word that I'd been looking for that applies to most of the things I've talked about today is hygge. It's a Danish word.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That means like sort of ordinary, or well, I guess ordinary or extraordinary, but like cozy, charming, homey,
Yeah.
special feeling. And
Wikipedia
yeah,
says it's a Danish and Norwegian word for a mood of coziness and comfortable conviviality with feelings of wellness and contentment.
Yeah, the wellness is actually part of it. Like your comfort and cozy surroundings are making you feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's what I've been doing a lot of for my viewing. So the last one is a podcast. I'm a big fan of basically everything that the McElroy brothers make. But one of them has come out with a podcast called The Empty Bowl. And it is a meditative podcast about cereal from cereal eater Justin McElroy and this is a really hard name to say, serialously creator Dan Goubert. it's supposed to be a pun in seriously, but it's really awkward to say. It's much better written out. And it's a blog about cereal.
Oh,
So the podcast has sort of, it's also hosted mostly on Anchor, which is kind of neat.
oh yeah.
It's these short episodes are like maybe half an hour. So I guess not super short, but short for a podcast. These half an hour episodes where they just talk about cereal, and it has some sort of some kind of like ASMR overtones because like they talk kind of low,
Yeah.
and there's sort of just these background sounds, like waves crashing or just really sort of slow atmospheric music.
Are
And
they at the place where the wave is crashing, or did they like put that in?
they put that in.
I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because it's recorded like over Skype or whatever. And it's just really pleasant, and it's sort of oddly nostalgic because like they talk about the cereals that they ate as a kid and what they like about cereal, and they talk about new cereals that are coming out, and it's kind of funny and charming. And every once in a while, like Justin cracks up a little because it's like he realizes that he's talking in this really serious way about cereal. And it's a
Mm,
little absurd to talk so seriously about cereal.
right.
Um,
Huh.
but cereal, I think, is so tied into, at least like with our generation, the idea of being a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And, like for me, like eating cereal and watching cartoons was a really great treat. And um, getting like a sugary cereal was sort of like a special thing, special occasion.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was little, it was Cinnamon Toast Crunch was like my favorite cereal.
Mm-hmm.
And usually I had something like healthy for breakfast before school, but sometimes on the weekends I would get Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And yeah, so they talk about different cereals and how they make different cereals, and um, sort of the psychology sometimes behind different like cereal marketing, which I find kind of interesting. Um, but yeah,
Huh.
again, it's a pleasant show, and it creates all these nostalgia vibes because it's talking about like sugar, the sugary
Uh-huh.
thing, and it's not an adult thing to eat, even though I still eat cereal sometimes.
I don't know that I would agree with you that it's not an adult
Well,
thing to
I
eat.
guess I should say they talk a lot about like sugary cereals,
Uh-huh.
like marshmallows, stuff that's like more directly marketed at kids,
Yeah.
um,
I see what you mean.
as opposed to like the sort of the healthier breakfast cereals that adults might eat. They talk
I
about like
still eat all those like sugary cereals, but the excuse I make for myself is I buy the organic stuff, Mom's Best or whatever the heck it's
yeah.
called.
In fact, I ordered some Mom's Best um, with marshmallows.
Yeah. There you
Mhm.
go. Oof. Can I say something about marshmallows?
Yeah,
That's sort of negative. Is that okay?
yeah, go for it.
I did not know until maybe 3 years ago that marshmallows were not vegetarian.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yep. Good old gelatin. That's what makes marshmallows.
All right.
Not fun. Sorry. I rained on your parade a little bit. Or
That's
maybe
okay.
not. I mean, you're
I
not
mean,
vegetarian.
I'm not vegetarian.
Yeah.
Um, so
Um,
more marshmallows for me, I guess.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
it's the idea of the podcast is kind of funny to me. So I don't know if that
pretty
will lose
funny.
steam if I'll get tired of it. But it's um the low tone also makes it really great for listening to at bedtime.
Right.
just
Yeah.
because they never get loud about anything in it.
There's like a whole series of podcasts like that now, like that are marketed towards that. Like we realize people are putting this shit on to go to sleep. Like there's that Sleep With Me. Have you ever heard of that? Sleep With Me
Yeah, I
podcast?
can't stand his voice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
But
can't handle it.
it's the same purpose. And then um it's just funny these like things that are popping up marketed specifically to people like that. Like you can also go on Amazon Prime and there's videos that are like made for sleeping.
Mhm.
Like yeah, like I've done that a couple times because my podcast app, it probably has an auto shut off, but I don't know how to turn it on. So what I do, my Amazon, I don't have set to autoplay for the next one, so it will shut off after one
Mhm.
episode or whatever. So I've used those videos on there because it's like, just one camera stationary at like a beach for 3 hours or whatever, and then it just turns off.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
That
have
that
a
sleep what anyway, I'm just trying to the sleep market or something. I don't know. What were you gonna say?
yeah. Oh, I have a timer on my podcast app that I use that you can set a sleep timer, and I set it for 30 minutes. Sometimes Empty Bowl, sometimes LeVar Burton reads, which I'll maybe talk about
Yeah,
next time.
I use that too, or I'll put in on Next Generation. By the
Yeah.
way,
Yes.
by the way,
Mhm.
if they just made audio, like I would like all I want is to be able to listen to these shows really sometimes. Like,
Oh,
and I
that would be
did.
fantastic.
Did I tell you about when I got that bug in my head that I was going to do that? So I took all of my Seinfeld. Well, I took 2 seasons worth of Seinfeld on DVD and then ripped them and then only ripped the audio out and then imported them into iTunes and then told iTunes that they were all audiobooks because otherwise it will stop, right? Like the next, if it's just a song,
Mhm.
if it's a 30-minute song, it won't work, right?
Sure.
So I have like 30 episodes of Seinfeld only audio, um, which is nice. It's nice to I just walk around and listen to my episodes of Seinfeld. And now that I'm thinking, now that I'm remembering, when my dad was in grad school and I was like 10 or 11 or something, um, on the one of the local TV stations, they would play the audio of the Star Trek episode that was airing at that time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we would be driving back because this was in Florida and like it was an hour and a half drive to wherever he was going to school. Anyway, yes.
Hmm. Nice.
My last thing. Are we ready for the last thing?
Yes, I'm ready.
I don't know if well, yeah, I'm enjoying this thing. So you'll hear why I say that.
Okay.
So my old iPhone 6, which now they're on iPhone 10R or something.
Mhm.
So I was using an iPhone 6 and it was getting pretty close to death. And then on like Cyber Monday, I hate that it has that name.
Yeah.
I fell prey to the deals and I bought myself um, a non iPhone phone. So it's my first like smartphone that's not an iPhone. Galaxy S9.
All right.
It's weird getting used to like all this Android stuff after having used iPhones because I feel like Android operating system, it's like they want to provide everybody with as many sliders and access to settings as you could possibly want.
Mhm.
And what iPhone does is like takes its best shot at like the 90% or maybe 80% of people. Like 80% of people probably will only care about this shit, like these things. And yeah, there's 10% that want it to do this thing, but we don't really care. Like you'll live with it. Which from a user standpoint, I understand because like it just takes too many steps, and like people might break the thing if they stumble into that setting or whatever, you know?
Hmm.
But whereas it seems like Android doesn't give a shit, and they're like, okay, we will provide you with a million different ways to do this stuff.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. It can be a little much.
it related, but one of the things that sold me on this was there's a YouTube series called Jerry Rig Everything, and
Okay.
this guy this guy gets sponsored by some sort of like um phone skin company.
Hmm.
But what he does is they buy him the phones, and then he makes two videos for every phone. He makes one video where he like calmly like takes the phone apart and shows you what all of the inner workings of the phone are, like where the battery is, and like what the screen is, and like where the microphones are, and all of that stuff. And it's like it's well produced, and the audio is recorded really well, so it's pretty high quality. You can see like the inside of this phone you're about to buy or have already bought, you know. And he talks about the pieces and stuff inside of it. And then the other video that he makes for every phone is he does a stress test on all of them.
Hmm.
So he'll like try to bend the phone in half. He'll like he'll scrape the outer side of the phone with different things of varying hardness. And like he'll scratch the screen with various hardnesses and show you like at what level it actually gets scratched and stuff.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, he did. I watched those for the new iPhone, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to buy that thing. And then wound up buying this Samsung. So
Hmm. Nice.
yeah,
I'll have to check that
and
out.
I was telling you, I had this weird like, it's so weird the emotions we put behind things.
Hmm.
Like you get emotionally attached to your phone. It's a phone. Like it when I say it's just a phone, I don't mean like it is only a device that you talk on, because obviously it's like your little mini computer and camera and stuff. So
Yeah.
it is more than a listening and talking device, but it still will get you on the internet and do what you need to do. It's just different.
Right.
But yeah, like I had logically made this choice and then had this weird emotional like, but what if I betrayed it? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the emotion was. It was weird.
Well, I think too with as quickly as technology changes and progresses, there's this idea that you have to get the right one,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because they cost a lot of money too, and
Yeah.
it's a big purchase, but it's so necessary for the world that we live in. Like you have to make this big purchase,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like the one you choose, like, well, I'm gonna have it for a while, so it better be the right one.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of kind of emotional, plus there's a lot of emotional connections to a phone. Like it's how we connect to our loved ones. It's how we document our lives. There's a lot there's a lot
Yeah.
connected to this phone.
Right. Right. But yeah, but at the same time, they'll all
It's a
pretty
phone.
much get the job done, you know?
Right.
And unless you can't afford it, and you're doing it like in some sort of act of desperation, you know, like, oh God, I hope this thing is right, you know,
Right.
like if you have a little leeway and a little wiggle room as far as finances go, you're probably going to be fine,
Yep.
right?
Yes. Because you can call the people, you can take the pictures, you can play the games.
Yeah, 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 and it will not be as everything is imperfect. The world has fallen from Eden or whatever the fuck, and everything
Hmm.
is imperfect and will not live up to your expectations. So
Hmm.
um yeah.
Yeah. If nothing matters, then nothing matters.
Right. Yeah, nothing matters. All right, well, that was a fun one.
Yeah. I was like when we can end on a existential note.
Of course,
It's
always.
nice. It's
There is there really any end?
true.
So I don't know. All right. Well, thanks, Rachel.
This was fun.
Yeah, good
I
time.
like talking about stuff that I like.
Yeah.
On the next episode, I'll just talk about this podcast.
Oh no. You'll have to start your own for that. Okay. Well, we'll talk to you next time.
All right. See ya.